In this video, we are going to be doing a Controller DJ Masterclass. We will be covering how to beat match, how to set cue points, how to mix track, dubstep and future bass, and lastly, how to drop mix with your controller. Now let's jump right into the Masterclass. Enjoy!
Alright, so beat matching is the topic that we're going to be covering today. Now, beat matching is the skill in DJing where you align two tracks in order to transition from one another. Now, with the help of the Hercules Impulse Assistance built into the controller, you can understand and perfect beat matching a lot more simpler. It has a whole bunch of inbuilt features that help you align tracks quicker, helps you get the mix flowing much more smoothly. I'm going to be using two house tracks, both from the same artist. I'll link his music down below if you want to check it or download these tracks. What we're going to be doing is we are going to be having one track play, start at the build-up-ish of the track, and then once the drop comes, we're going to be queuing up the track and then playing and using the beat match guide to align the second track into the first one. Now, we don't need to use the beat matching guide if we don't need to, but it's a super cool and useful feature that this controller has. Now, if you're following along with a different kind of controller, the principles are just the exact same. Yeah, it should be pretty easy to follow along. So without further ado, let's get into the mix. Now, so the first track I'm going to be using is Assassin by Silence, and we're going to be mixing that into the track Jealous, also by Silence. So both tracks are 126 BPM. If they were at different BPMs, I would be using the tempo slider to move the BPM so the tracks both match each other. But since they're at 126 BPM, I won't need to touch them. Alright, so starting off with the build-up of the first track. Starting to cue up and get the rhythm. Alright, so both my tracks are aligned and they sound good. So the second track, I'm gonna turn down the low knob, start bringing it up. Cue the master headphone channel so I can hear both tracks playing like they would be on the speakers. Both of them sound good, so I'm bringing it up. Alright, now I'm swapping the low frequencies and bringing down the first track. So I'm going to be going over that one more time, but essentially what you saw me do there was have the first track playing. With the help of the cue button, I am basically capturing the rhythm of the first track, so counting 4 beats. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when the build up stops, there's a fill, 4-bar fill. And at that point, that's when I'm actually, counting, for real and trying to get the final rhythm together in order to hit that first beat of the drop and have as little, adjusting as possible just to make it a lot easier for myself. But this time, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using the beat match guide. So in this scenario, I'm going to be hitting play a little bit later than I'm supposed to be, or than I'd, normally be hitting play. And then I'm going to be using the beat align with the beat match guide to help me align my second track into my first one. So what's going to be happening is basically the second deck is going to detect that my track is, off of the beat line of the first track, and it's going to be urging me to either spin it in one direction or the other using the two little LEDs or the two lights down here. So if it's closer to the side that says forward, I'm going to be spinning the track forward in that direction, or if it's in reverse, I'm going to be spinning the track in reverse. And if the light is blinking, red heavily, then that means I have to keep going. Once it starts flickering and going in between, both the forward and the reverse lights, then that means I'm getting really close. And once the colors fade away and there's no colors, then that means the two tracks are usually in sync and I can go and continue my transition. So that's what I'm going to be showcasing for you guys right now. So let's start with the build up again of the first track, and I'm going to be starting to cue up and hit play a little bit late on that second track. Alright, I'm gonna hit this one a little bit late. Alright, so now you can see the light has lit up. It means it's urging me to keep scrolling forwards. Keep going. Oh, it's starting to flicker. Oh, and the 2 beats are aligned now that it's turned off. So now I can turn down my low frequency knob and start bringing in the fader of my second track. Sounds pretty good. And bring down my first track. And that's the transition going, you know, pretty smoothly. So as you can see there, the beat match guide with the beat align function helped me out quite a bit. I knew exactly in what direction I had to pull the jog wheel in order to align both of the tracks. And yeah, it helped me align it pretty quickly even though they were off. But that usually happens if, you know, this is a perfect feature if you're a beginner, because usually when I was starting off, I didn't know which way to spin the jog wheel because it was really confusing. But with this function, it allows you to have more understanding and your controller is more responsive to the information that you need. So it would really help in a situation if I was learning and starting out on DJing. So yeah, this is just a very, very useful little function, and I'm super, super stoked that Hercules is putting this function in to their controllers, because it's such a helpful little thing and it can help out your beginner stages of DJing so much and just move you so much faster to more of the advanced stages where you can be using bigger controllers, moving on to more effects and more DJing techniques, and you can get the basics. You can get the hang of the basics super, super quick. Alright, so this wraps up the small little beginner's tutorial on beat matching using the Hercules Impulse 300. This next part is going to be just a little bit of a mini mix of me just simply using the beat matching guide and beat matching tracks together, transitioning from one to the other. Super, super simple. If you guys want to stick around for that, definitely check it out if you need some more examples. But other than that, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, if you guys want to enter to win that Hercules Impulse 200 controller, make sure you go check out the description or the comment section below and find out how you can enter there. Again, big shout out to Hercules for sponsoring these videos and being so generous with the gear that they're providing. So make sure you guys go and support Hercules and support the channel. So see you guys soon.
When you drop it.
today we're going to be discussing how to set hot cues, what hot cues are used for, and also at the end showing a little bit of an example of how hot cues can be used in the mix to either help you speed up your mix, save your mix, or just add a little bit of spice into your mix. Now the controller that we're going to be using today is the Hercules Impulse 300 controller sent to us by Hercules. Big shout out to them. We're also going to be doing a giveaway for the Hercules Impulse 200 controller in this video, so make sure you check out the description or the comment section below on how you can enter. Now without further ado, let's get right into this tutorial. So we're going to be setting hot cues for two different tracks, both by the same artist, Silence. I'll link him down below. Now the first track is going to be at 123 BPM, 125 BPM. We'll adjust them later when we're going to be mixing them. But essentially right now we're going to be going and focusing on this area down here, which has all the pads and has the hot cue, roll, slicer, and sampler area. We're going to be using the hot cues and we're going to be setting them. So right off the bat, we don't need to set one of the hot cues just because the controller and the software already does it for us. Now that's going to be from the cue button right over here. Now this cue button allows us to basically have a cue set at the very beginning of the track, and from there we can just mix instantly. But if we want to set cues and start from different points of the track, so skip big portions of the track and move to certain points like the build up or the break or the drop, then we're gonna have to use and set our hot cues. This is usually done pre-set, so when you're preparing the tracks that you're gonna be playing or analyzing your tracks, this is the perfect time to set up these hot cues. So right now we have the hot cue already set at the beginning, so we don't need to do that. Then our moving for the order of action, we're gonna be setting a hot cue in the build-up, and this track is just a traditional house track, but it's structured a little bit differently. So it goes straight from the intro, a 45-second intro instead of a 30-second one, and then it goes straight into a build-up that goes for around 30 seconds into a drop that's around a minute long. So right here, judging by this green fill, we can know that this is a 4-bar fill that leads into the build-up because you can see the waveform gets a little bit different. So we can set our first hot cue, line it up on the first beat of that build-up, press the first hot cue button, and now we have a hot cue set to the build-up of the first track. Now using this, we can mix two build-ups together. So if we have a track playing, we can skip to the first hot cue immediately when we load this one, and we can play both build-ups, beat match it together, and then go into a drop switch or do any other kind of technique that we want to. So this is a super useful hot cue for drop mixes and stuff like that. Now moving on, skipping through the track, we know that there's another fill right here, a 4-bar fill, a 4-beat 1-bar fill, and then it goes straight into the drop. We know that because there's a green fill, and then the waveform changes from going light to green for 4 beats, and then into a much thicker red waveform where it shows that where the drop is. So right here, we can pause, we can line it up to the first beat, press the second hot cue, and now we have a hot cue lined up on the first drop. So from here, this would be super useful. Let's say we have a track that's playing that's currently in the build-up phase, and we can see that the track ends right after the drop, so there's no kind of outro to the track. This can be super useful because we can skip straight to the drop, and we can align the two drops together and then transition from that track into the next one, into either the break, the build-up, or anything else. So in this case, the track would just continue into another little bit of an extended drop, so we can transition it to that. Or let's say, for example, we set it on a different track, it goes into a break. We can just align the two drops together, beat match them, and then when it comes time to transition, we can just transition into the break because they're already aligned, we're already skipped through into the track, and it didn't waste us any time. So that would be where I would set my second hot cue. Moving on, we can see that the drop is a little bit extended, and over here, if we skip through, there's another 4-beat 1-bar fill, and then it goes straight into the second build-up. So we can set a hot cue point there, and then now we have a hot cue set for the build-up of the second part of the track. So that's perfect. And we can move on to another 4-beat 1-bar fill. Kind of continues a little bit and extends, and then goes into the drop, so we can align that there, set the fourth one there, and now we have all 4 of our hot cues programmed. Now on this controller, the awesome thing is we can set up to 8 hot cues. Now for this track in specific, just because it has a really simple structure, simple house structure to it, we don't really need to set 8. 8 would be just, you know, too many hot cues at too many different points. This has a very simple structure of going from the intro to the build-up to the drop to the build-up to the drop. And we already have one hot cue set automatically for us with the cue button up here for the intro. Then we have the build-up set, drop, the build-up, and the drop set already. So we have all the points, all the essential and the big points in the track covered with our hot cues. So this is aligned, and now we can start to check out our second track. So the second track they're going to be using is Jealous by Silence, 125 BPM, also a house track, but this has a more traditional layout where it has a 30-second intro, a break and a build up, and then a drop, and then it goes again into another break, build up, and drop. So again, we have the first cue already set for us by the controller. We don't need to do anything, as you can hear. And then we go straight into another hot cue. So hot cue set, and now we can set our first hot cue, which is going to be the break of the track. So as you can hear here, there's a green area which is called the fill, and that shows us that this is another small little transition point that moves from the intro to the break of the track. So right here at this red point, we know that the track goes into the break, and we can go ahead and set our first hot cue over there. Then moving along, we know that this point right here, just by listening to the track, is where the build-up drums start to come in. So set our second hot cue point right there. Moving along, obviously we can see that the wavelengths go thin and then all of a sudden go really thick. That's where our drop is, so we set one there. And then moving along, we can set a hot cue point here at the build-up, or sorry, the break. And then moving along,
on the bed with the monsters. Shorty taking shots going back to back on black. Why see in this bitch throwing rat. On the bed with the monsters. On the bed with the monsters. On the bed with the monsters.
And we can hear that the build up comes here, so we can set a fifth cue point here, and then we can skip through again and set one right at the second drop, right over here. So now we have pretty much 7 hot cue points set, or cue points set for our track. One for the very beginning, then we have one for the break, build up, drop, break, build up, drop. Now we have all the hot cue points covered. And essentially, when we go into our mix and we're mixing, now when we load in a track, we have all these different points that we can skip to, judging by whatever track that we're trying to mix, whatever flow we're trying to achieve in our mix. And that'll really help take off some of the pressure of skipping through the whole track when we're actually mixing or performing. So it's really nice to be prepared when you're in your live mix and you're playing a mix. It's nice to have all these cue points already set so you can jump from one part of the track to the other. But yeah, now let's get right into a little bit of a mini mix, and I'll show you how I use these hot cues in a mix, so stay tuned.
She on cue with no pool sticks, vibing thing with no Q-tip. Map a body, no blueprint. We jump up and down and straight lose it. Under bed with the monsters. 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 With the monsters. With the monsters. With the monsters.
Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share, comment, and also go check out the description and the comment section below on how you guys can win a Hercules Impulse 200 controller. We'll be doing a giveaway for the controller and we'll be announcing it before the next video, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to go check out Hercules, go follow all the steps in the description for how you can win, and yeah, stay tuned for future videos on tutorials and so much more with this controller. Yo guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing the trap, dubstep, future bass mixing tutorial on the Hercules Impulse 300 controller. Let's get started. Now before we get into the video, if you guys want a chance to win a Hercules Impulse 200 controller, you guys can go check out the comment section down below or the description and see how you can enter to win yourselves an awesome controller with a ton of cool features like the beat match guide, beat align, and the Hercules Assistant, and just overall a fantastic controller that will help you get the hang of DJing through all the basics and yeah, get you into a really solid place where you can progress as a DJ. But without further ado, we're going to be hopping into the trap, dubstep, and future bass mixing part of this video. So today I'm going to be using 3 tracks to show you how to mix. One is a future bass track, the other one is a sort of trap track, and the third one is a dubstep track. So all 3 of these are at 150 BPM, but most tracks falling in the genres of trap, dubstep, and future bass, they can range from anywhere from 70 to 72.5 to 75 to 78, 80, all the way up to 100, and then of course 140, 145, 150 BPM. So a little bit of BPM tempo adjusting might be needed for tracks like that. So if you're trying to mix a track that's 140 into a 75 track, you're gonna have to bump that down, that 75 track down to 70 BPM in order to match it. So 70 times 2 is 140. So that means both of them are gonna be able to get mixed together, and they're not gonna go off beat. But if you want to mix 75 into 150, that works because 75 times 2, 150 BPM. But in this case, I'm just going to be having 3 tracks that are going to be all at 150 BPM, so it's going to be really easy for me to mix. So in terms of hot cues, we're not going to be using hot cues today. We're just going to be queuing it up from the beginning of the track and mixing it into the drop. That's usually kind of the best way. That you can also have the intro playing in the part of the drop and sort of mix the 2 tracks together, as you'll see in this tutorial. But essentially, I have my first track queued up with the cue button over here. You can hear it. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be waiting for the drop. So in the build-up, I already have my second track prepared. And so I have my headphone cue on. And if I cue this, the intro is quite long. So basically, if I cue it in at the very beginning of the drop on the first track, and I mix it in throughout the whole drop, by the end of the drop on the first track, I can basically just switch it into the break of the second track, and that's what's going to be happening. And then right after, I'm going to be waiting for about half of this drop to go I'm gonna be waiting for the break to finish into the build up, and then on the drop of my second track, I'm gonna start mixing into my third track, which is gonna be the dubstep track. So it's gonna go from future bass to trap to dubstep. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into this. Yeah, so basically that was mixing. Just gonna go ahead and do that whole mix one more time and just kind of run you guys through what was happening. So I mix it in here. My red button's still glowing, so now that it's off, I can start to mix this in, turn down the lows and bring it up. Now we're basically waiting for the break to come in. So bring up the lows and bring the first track down. Okay, now that the second track is in, we want to go ahead and load in our third track. Or our next track, just in any case. So we're waiting for the break to finish playing. And we have our third track already queued up. Here comes the build up. Okay, now that the beat line is off, I can bring my low down, start to bring this track in, but since it's not that loud, I have to bring my lows up. Yeah, so essentially that was mixing in those three genres all together. The guidelines for mixing those three genres together are choosing the same key, mixing it into the same BPM, so adjusting it so that either the half time goes into the double time of that track, or just pitching down or pitching up to adjust it to either, so both tracks are at 140, 145, 150, whatever the case may be. And then also, if you guys haven't watched any of my videos on setting hot cues and how to use hot cues, you should go check them out. I will link them up in the corner. And yeah, so another useful thing could be just setting up hot cues in different points of the track. So if you wanted to have a visual cue of where you should mix in the drop, have a hot cue set up right at the drop of that beat so that you never miss it. You see that hot cue coming in, and that lets you know that it's that point where the drop needs to be mixed in. So in that case, you wouldn't basically miss where the drop is and have to wait for the second drop, or in the worst case scenario, basically miss the drop on the second drop of the track, and it leads out into the end of the track, and basically you don't have something mixed. So that's a great way to prevent that from happening and always be prepared. Essentially, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to stay tuned. I'm going to be doing a mini mix right now, showcasing how to basically go through all these different genres together. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want more tutorial videos on the Hercules Impulse 300 controller. And if you guys want a chance to win the Hercules Impulse 200 controller, make sure to go in the description below and in the comment section and find out how you can win. But yeah, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace. Today we are going to be discussing drop mixing on the Hercules Impulse 300 controller given to us by Hercules DJ. Big shout out to them. But essentially I've done this sort of video in some previous videos on my channel, but with the cool new functions of this controller like the beat match guide, I'm going to do this tutorial again, show you how to drop mix on controllers and use these cool helpful features to let you get the hang of drop mixing much quicker and make you a pro at it. So let's get started. Essentially, drop mixing is going from the build-up of two tracks, aligning them, and going from the drop of one track to the drop of the other, switching it at the last moment. So how that would actually look is I would have one track playing, so on, let's say deck 2 is playing and it's going close to the build-up, let's say it's in the break. On my next track that I'm going to be drop mixing it into, I have my hot cues set up. If you guys don't know how to set up hot cues, that was the last video that I did. You guys can check it up in the corner. So you set up a hot cue at the build-up, and so when the build-up starts to approach on this first track, you already have your cue for the build-up on the second track. You hit the cue at the same time as the build-up starts, so now you have two build-ups going at the same time, and that's when you start bringing up your second track. So now you have two build-ups playing at the same time. You can take out the low so it doesn't get muddy, but essentially you want the listener or the audience to hear that there's two build-ups going at the same time and that they are expecting something different to happen. Sometimes you can bring the build-up and kind of let them know that something else is happening in the mix, or you can just simply drop switch at the last second and give them something completely new, but that usually is more reserved for tracks that work super well together. Some popular tracks from, let's say, like Tiesto going into like like a Chainsmokers song, something pop, something that people can expect, like a quick mashup, that's where you do just a simple drop switch right at the drop. But if the two tracks are kind of a little bit different, they don't really necessarily flow into each other, you can start bringing it up and teasing it in the mix, and then just bring down the first track right when the drop hits, and then now you have the drop playing from the second track. So that's essentially the concept of drop mixing. Now let's talk about the tracks that we're going to be using today. The first one is Loopy by Silence, and the second one is Assassin by Silence. They're both tracks from an awesome artist that I love to support. You guys can check them out in the description below. So the first track that I'm going to be using is at 123 BPM. It is a bass house track. So we'll just keep that at 123 BPM, but we're going to go down into the tempo of the second track and pitch it down to 123. There we go, 123. Okay, so I'm going to start playing this from around the build-up, or sorry, the break, and then I already have my hot cue set up for the build-up of my second track, so it's set up on hot cue 2. So if I press hot cue 2, it's just going to go straight to the build-up. So let's get started. I have my first track queued up here, so let's just get started with that. So essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for the build-up of this track to go. It's already queued up at 6 for me. So when I see that approaching, I'm going to have my hot cue ready for my second track for the build-up, and that's set up on hot cue 2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press hot cue 2 to align it to the build-up, and then while holding the second hot cue down, I'm going to press play and release. So here it goes. I'm going to align it using beat align. That was essentially drop mixing it from Loopy into Assassin. Now what you saw me do there, just a quick recap, is so I had my first track playing, and I already knew where the build-up was going to be based on how the song structure was laid out, but in order to help me a little bit more, I pre-listened to the track and set up a hot cue at the build-up, so it has a little bit of a marker showing where the build-up starts. Right when the build-up starts, I already have my hot cue set up for my second track. I press the hot cue, I hold it down and press play at the same time. Now why do I do that is because if I just press 2 and let go, it's going to go back to the hot cue position where it was, and it's not going to play. But if I hold down the button and then press play at the same time, let go, it lets the track continue to play, and then you can just keep on mixing. That's a cool little function that you can use in order to instantly play from playing a hot cue, or you can just set the hot cue from where you want, either 2, 3, and then just press play from there, whatever works for you. But for me, I like to get the timing correct on my my hot cue, so if I keep playing, keep pressing the hot cue, it'll go back and I can get the rhythm of the track that I'm trying to align it to. But if I keep pressing play, it's not going to let me do the same thing. So that's why I love using the hot cue feature and then holding it down and pressing play. So that's a cool little feature of this controller. Now, another useful thing is that even though I didn't have a clear kick, or I wasn't aligning the track to the beginning and the end of the track, so it has a clear beats to beat match to, the beat match guide still allowed me to match the build-ups of the two tracks. Even though they were kind of off by a little bit, the track that got analyzed, it went a bit off because the intro is slightly a bit different. It has a leading a whoosh sound that goes into the first beat, so it's just off by one beat grid. But still, regardless of that, the controller saw that the beats were aligned, and it just helped me align it with the guides in the controller. So it has super smart functions, and I actually made this so much easier, and I can see how a beginner would love to use this controller in order to learn drop mixing, just beat matching, and just mixing and transitioning just in general. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into a little mini mix where I just showcase me going from different build-ups and drop mixing them into different tracks, just to show you guys some more examples. Yeah, so let's get started with that. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, let me know if this tutorial helped, and yeah, if you guys want to win a Hercules Impulse 200 controller, look down in the description below for all the steps that you can do to enter the giveaway, and yeah, I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.